How many times have you written out amazing plans for your life but never actually started? Have you ever sat up at night imagining a brighter future, a stronger version of yourself, only to wake up the next morning and return to the same old routine? I've seen millions of people trapped in that same loop. They dream a lot but do very little. They think the more they plan, the closer they get to success. But in truth, they're stuck in the illusion of progress where the mind is busy but the feet don't move. I used to be like that. I dreamed of a better, freer, wealthier life. I drew plans, read books, wrote goals, imagined myself changing. But year after year, I was still in the same place. And then I realized something that woke me up. Dreams don't need more paper. Dreams need action. The world doesn't reward people with ideas. It rewards those who make them happen. You can't think your way to the finish line with imagination alone. You have to take steps. Because only when you move, everything else truly starts to move too. I once said success doesn't come from noise, it comes from the quiet momentum you build every day. If you're tired of dreaming without seeing results, then today I'm going to share with you 7 principles to turn imagination into reality, so you can not only dream of a better life, but actually build it step by step. And you'll want to stay until the end of the video, because principle number 7 is the secret behind why most people fail without knowing why. Principle number 1, stop endless planning. Start with the smallest step. I've met so many people who told me, Jim, I'm planning something big. When everything's perfect, I'll start. But year after year, they still haven't started. They have dozens of ideas, hundreds of pages of plans, and thousands of excuses to delay. They keep waiting for tomorrow, not realizing that that tomorrow never comes. I realize that every plan is meaningless if you don't take the first step. The world doesn't reward those with great ideas. It rewards those who take action. A perfect plan can't create real results, but one small action can open up an entire path. You can spend the whole day dreaming about the future, but one small thing done today moves you further than 99% of those who only talk. When I was young, I was also a professional dreamer. I wrote goals, drew life maps, imagined success, but one day I looked back and saw that I was still standing still. I had written too much and done too little. I told myself, Jim, stop writing, start doing. I picked just one small thing, reading 10 pages of a book every day. Not 100, not 50, just 10. And that small action sparked an unexpected chain of change. I didn't wait for inspiration, I acted to create inspiration. And I discovered inspiration doesn't come before action, it comes after. You can't wait until you're ready to start, because readiness only comes once you've started. Most people fail not because they aren't smart, but because they stay too long at the starting line, trying to calculate every risk. But the map of life doesn't appear while you're standing still. It unfolds only when you move. You can't steer a parked car. To adjust your direction, you have to get it moving. Every small action is proof that you're truly alive. It sends a powerful signal to the universe, I'm serious about my dream. The universe doesn't respond to words, it responds to movement. Successful people don't wait for the perfect moment. They create it through their actions. I remember a young student named David. He had hundreds of ideas but did nothing. One day I asked David, what have you done today to move closer to your dream? He was silent. I said, ideas don't produce results, action does. The next day he filmed his first video, shaky, dimly lit, awkward but real. A month later he had 10 videos. 6 months later he had an entire inspirational channel. And I told him, that's the power of the first step. Dreams are like seeds. Plans are just the blueprint of the garden, but you have to dig, plant, and water every day. If not, that seed will die in your imagination. Once you've learned how to start, even with just one small step, the next thing you need is to turn that action into a daily habit. Because starting once is easy, but doing it every day is what changes your entire life. And that's exactly the second principle I want to share with you. Turn your dream into a daily habit of action. Principle number 2, turn your dream into a daily habit of action. Once you've learned how to start, even with just one small step, the next thing you need to do is turn that action into a way of life. Because starting once is easy, but doing it every day is what truly changes your entire life. I once said motivation gets you started, but habit keeps you going. I've met hundreds of people who began with incredible excitement. They set goals, made plans, shouted promises. But after a few weeks, everything faded. Not because they weren't smart or hardworking, but because they never turned their actions into a part of their daily lives. I once had a student named Sarah. She worked hard, she was hungry for success, but she always complained, Coach, I'm doing so much, but I don't see progress. I asked, do you take action every day? She said, no, only when I feel inspired. I smiled and said, Sarah, inspiration isn't something you should rely on. Inspiration is a reward, not a requirement. It comes after you act, never before. She went quiet. The next day, she started small reading, just 5 pages a day, no matter how tired or busy she was. The first week, she had to force herself. The second week, it got easier. By the fourth week, she no longer needed reminders because it had become part of her. I realized a truth. Success isn't what you do once. Success is what you do every day, even when it seems trivial. You can't go to the gym once and expect to stay fit forever. You can't read one book and expect to stay wise forever. But if you build a habit of reading, learning, and doing every single day, you'll gradually become the person you want to be. A dream only stays alive when it's nurtured daily. And what nurtures it is the habit of consistent action. Inspiration is a wave, it rises and falls. Habit is a river, it flows steadily, endlessly. You can't row only when the tide is high. You must learn to move with the current even when the water is still. Most people live by emotion. When they're happy, they work hard. When they're tired, they give up. But successful people don't act because they feel like it. They act because that's who they've become. When action becomes habit, you no longer have to force yourself. You're simply living as who you truly are. I still remember when I first started practicing public speaking. At first, I was so nervous I forgot my words, my shirt drenched in sweat. But I didn't quit. I spoke every week, even if, only for 5 minutes, even if there were just 3 people in the audience. Eventually, it became a part of me. Like a musician who practices daily until their fingers move without thought and music simply flows. Habit creates naturalness, and that naturalness is the highest form of discipline. You see, willpower is like a battery, powerful but limited. Habit is like a power source. It regenerates energy every day. If you have to push yourself hard just to act, you'll soon burn out. But if you turn action into habit, you don't need to push, you just live. Habit is success's most loyal friend. It doesn't judge you, it doesn't need emotion, it just asks you to show up every single day. A dream is like a flame. If you blow on it once, it will die. But if you gently feed it every day, it will burn forever. And one day you'll look back and realize you're no longer dreaming of a better life, you're living the dream itself. And once you've built the habit of daily action, you'll discover something greater. You can't rely on emotion forever. Emotions shift by the hour, but discipline systems keep you steady for a lifetime. So in the next principle, I'll share with you how to build a system of self-discipline, so you don't have to struggle to force yourself every day, yet still move forward naturally, steadily, and powerfully. Principle number 3, don't wait for inspiration. Create a system to move forward. I once said discipline may hurt in the short term, but regret will weigh on you for a lifetime. And that's never been wrong. Once you've built the habit of taking action, your problem is no longer how to start, it's how to keep going when the inspiration is gone. Because there will be days when you're tired, when your mind feels empty, when you wake up with no motivation at all. If you rely only on inspiration, you'll stop on those days. But if you have a system, you'll keep moving even when your heart isn't burning like before. I've met many people who told me, Jim, lately I've lost my motivation. I don't feel like doing anything. I laughed and asked, so did you do anything today? They said, no, I'm waiting for my inspiration to come back. I looked at them and said, then you'll be waiting a long time. Inspiration is a fickle guest. It comes when it wants and leaves when you need it most. If you live by inspiration, your life becomes a ship drifting on the ocean, moving only when the wind blows. Successful people don't live that way. They build systems, a structure of discipline that keeps them on course, even when the wind changes. I don't write when I feel like it. I write because it's the time I set aside to write. I don't speak only when I feel ready. I speak because it's what I'm supposed to do. And strangely, every time I start without inspiration, within minutes it comes back. Inspiration follows action, it never leads it. If you want to go far, don't ask, how can I get inspired? Ask instead, how can I build a system that makes me act even when I don't want to? I once learned an important lesson. No one stays strong for long in a weak environment. You can have strong willpower for a few days, but if your surroundings are full of distractions, that willpower will fade. So instead of constantly fighting laziness, build an environment where action becomes the easiest choice. When I wanted to read more, I didn't force myself. I placed books everywhere on the dining table, next to my bed, in my jacket pocket. When I wanted to exercise, I didn't wait for inspiration. I placed my shoes by the door. Every morning they reminded me, just slip them on and step outside. And when you make action part of your environment, you no longer have to push yourself. You just live in a space designed for discipline. I remember a student named Ethan. He often said, Coach, I don't have enough discipline to focus. I asked, what does your workspace look like? He said, my laptop is open next to my phone and notifications keep popping up. I smiled and said, "Ethan, it's not that you lack discipline. You're living in a system that sets you up to fail." The next day, he turned off notifications, put his phone on airplane mode, and cleared his desk until only a notebook and a pen remained. A week later, he messaged me, "Coach, I can finally focus." That's the power of a disciplined environment. Emotions are like water, always changing. Systems are like a dam. They control and direct that flow. You can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. And your system is that sail. If you rely only on emotion, you won't go far. But if you rely on a system, you'll keep moving even when your heart feels tired. Because a system doesn't need emotion, it just needs you to show up. When you have a system, you no longer wake up asking, "Do I feel like doing this today?" You simply do it. And that simplicity is the most powerful weapon against procrastination. Because discipline isn't restriction, discipline is freedom. When you live by a system, you're no longer ruled by emotion. You own your rhythm, moving forward naturally, steadily, and without dependence on fleeting motivation. And once you understand that, you'll realize success doesn't come from bursts of inspiration, but from the structure of a life built with intention. And that's when you'll be ready for the next principle, where you'll learn how to embrace mistakes, early treat failure as data, not as a verdict. Because only when you dare to move through your mistakes will you truly understand what real progress means. Principle number 4, accept mistakes early. They're proof you're alive. Once you have a system to move forward, the next thing you must learn is to face mistakes. Not to fear them, but to grow from them. Because no one can go far if they're afraid of stumbling. In fact, those who never make mistakes are those who have never truly lived. I used to think success was a straight path, flawless and error-free. But then life taught me something completely different. Mistakes are the tuition you pay to buy wisdom. And that's true word for word. I've paid a lot of tuition. When I was young, I once made a failed investment deal. I lost almost all the money I had. At the time, I felt ashamed, bitter, and disappointed in myself. I thought I wasn't good enough, not lucky enough, not wise enough to succeed. But then I started to look back and write down everything I had done wrong. I hadn't prepared carefully. I trusted people too easily. I invested based on emotion instead of principle. And then I realized that very mistake was a priceless gift. Mistakes don't come to knock you down. Mistakes come to correct you. If you learn the lesson that mistake has fulfilled its mission. I used to tell my students, don't try to avoid failure. Fail faster. They looked at me in surprise. I smiled and explained, if you fail early, you have time to learn to adjust to try again. But if you stand still waiting for everything to be perfect, you'll never know where you're wrong. You see, the person who fears mistakes is the one who has never moved forward. They stay in the comfort zone where there's no risk but no growth either. They forget that each slip is a lesson in balance. The more you fall, the steadier you become. I once had a young student named Daniel. He was very talented but so perfectionistic that he was paralyzed. He was always afraid to start because he was afraid of getting it wrong. One time I said, Daniel, try doing something even if it's just the first step. He replied, Coach, what if I do it wrong? I said, you definitely will. And that's the best thing that could happen. He looked at me not understanding. I continued, if you never get it wrong, it means you've never learned. If you've never learned, it means you're still standing still. And if you're standing still, it means you're moving backward because this world never stops moving forward. A few months later, Daniel came back with a completely different smile. He said he had made a lot of mistakes, but thanks to that, he understood more about himself, his work, and what really mattered. He said, Coach, for the first time, I feel like I'm alive. I nodded and replied, that's right, Daniel, you're truly alive. Mistakes are not failure. Real failure is refusing to learn from mistakes. Every time you dare to step on stage, dare to try something new, dare to begin the journey, you've already won half the battle. The world doesn't need you to be perfect. The world needs you to be honest about your process. When you fall forward. When you do it wrong, learn quickly. And once you've learned, do it again, but better. That's how you grow, not in theory, but in your own real experience. Mistakes are proof that you're alive, that you're moving, you're trying, you're evolving. Those who fear mistakes are often those sitting on the sidelines of life. They watch, they comment, but they don't step onto the real playing field. But if you're acting, if you're trying, if you're stumbling, congratulations, you're on the right track. Because the road to success isn't paved with perfection. It's paved with lessons. And once you've learned to accept mistakes, you'll understand something deeper. Success doesn't come from avoiding mistakes, but from moving forward despite them. And to do that, you need to know how to measure progress instead of counting failures. So in the next principle, I'll share with you how to look back on your journey more wisely, so you won't get discouraged when you don't see big results yet, but will know how to recognize every small sign of true growth. Principle number 5, measure progress instead of counting failures. After you've learned to accept mistakes, the next thing you need to learn is to look back on your journey with the eyes of progress, not judgment. Because if you only count your failures, you'll see a life full of cracks. But if you know how to measure each step forward, no matter how small, you'll see yourself gradually becoming stronger every day. I once said, don't let what you haven't achieved overshadow what you have. There's a truth I believe everyone should know. Success doesn't arrive in a single day, but you can see it every day if you know where to look. Unfortunately, most people only look at where they haven't reached instead of where they've already passed. They compare themselves to others, then torment themselves, doubt themselves, and judge themselves by unfair standards. As a result, they feel exhausted, lose faith, and gradually stop trying. I once fell into that situation. There was a period in my life when I worked non-stop learning speaking, writing, teaching. But then one day I looked at the results and saw nothing as big as I'd hoped. I thought I had failed. Until a friend said to me, Jim, don't you see? You're getting better every day. You're just making the wrong comparison. That sentence woke me up. I began to measure my life not by achievements, but by progress. I didn't ask, what have I achieved? I asked, how much have I moved forward since yesterday? And when I changed the question, my life changed too. I once had a student named Linda. She was always disappointed in herself. She said, Coach, I work out for a week, then stop. I read for a few days, then quit. I can't do anything. I asked Linda, did you work out last week? She answered, yes, 3 days. I smiled. Good. Before last week, you never worked out right. Then those 3 days are progress. She was surprised, but I still haven't kept it consistent, Coach. I said, that's okay. 3 days is the start of a habit. Don't demand perfection. Acknowledge movement. You see, progress doesn't need to be loud. It only needs to be recognized correctly. A seed sprouting makes no sound, but it's a sign of life. Your life is the same. The first changes are always quiet, and if you're not patient enough to notice them, you'll quit right before the miracle happens. Most people don't quit because they can't succeed, but because they don't see themselves progressing. They think their efforts are useless when in fact each day they're moving a little. But they don't measure it, and what isn't measured is easily forgotten. I advise everyone to record their journey. Each day, just write down 3 things. 1, what did I do well today? 2, what did I learn? 3, where will I do better tomorrow? You'll be surprised when you look back after a month. You'll see you've gone much farther than you imagined. I once said success isn't a giant leap, but a series of small steps recorded and nourished every day. Don't let your mind trick you into thinking that not good enough means worthless. No one changes their life overnight. But if you move forward a little each day after 365 days, you've traveled a long way. And remember, the enemy of growth isn't failure, it's forgetting your progress. Give yourself the right to be acknowledged, to be proud to see the value in each small effort. Because those small things, when added together, create great results. If today you're just a little better than yesterday, you're already winning. If today you didn't give up, even when you felt tired, you're still moving forward. Don't demand that you make a huge leap, just don't stop. Because on this journey, success doesn't belong to the fastest, but to the most persistent. And when you learn how to see your progress, you'll begin to build solid faith in the process. From there, you won't be haunted by outcomes, but will find happiness in the actions themselves. And that's when you're ready for the next principle, where I'll share how to keep your mind focused on your goals instead of being pulled by fear. Because in every great journey, the greatest enemy isn't failure. It's the fear that stops you before you even begin. Principle number 6, keep your mind focused on the goal, not on fear. After you learn to view progress instead of failure, the next thing you need to learn is to keep your mind always looking forward. Because nothing kills a dream faster than fear. Fear is like a quiet thief. It doesn't come to scare you. It comes to steal your future bit by bit. It makes you doubt yourself, hesitate before opportunities, and look for excuses not to start. And the scariest part is, sometimes you don't realize you're afraid. You just think you're not ready yet. I've felt that way before. When I first started my public speaking career, I was very afraid. I was afraid I'd say the wrong thing, afraid the audience would laugh, afraid people wouldn't care. I thought about quitting more than once. But then I realized fear doesn't disappear when you avoid it. It only disappears when you face it. I remember the first day I stepped onto the stage, my hands were shaking, my voice was hoarse, my heart pounded like a drum. But I still spoke. And when I finished, even though it wasn't perfect, I realized that the world didn't collapse. No one mocked me. On the contrary, someone came up, shook my hand, and said, "Jim, your talk made me think." In that moment, I understood fear is just an illusion, and action is the only way to pierce through it. People often ask me, "Jim, how do I overcome fear?" I answer, don't try to overcome it. Learn to move forward with it. Because fear doesn't go away. You just become stronger than it. Fear is a natural human reflex, but what separates successful people from those who quit is where they look. Failures look at what they fear. Successful people look at what they want. And where you set your gaze is where your life will go. If you spend all day thinking, "What if I fail?" you'll act like someone who's afraid. But if you think, "What if I succeed?" you'll act like someone who's moving forward. Your mind is a compass. It will lead you to wherever you focus. I once had a student named Kevin. He wanted to start a business, had a good idea, had ability. But he always said, "Coach, what if I fail?" I asked back, "And what if you succeed?" He fell silent. I continued, "Kevin, you've spent so much time imagining the worst that you've forgotten to picture the good that could happen." A few months later, he launched his business, not because he stopped being afraid, but because he finally chose to look at the goal instead of the fear. You see, fear and dreams both live in your mind, but only one of them gets fed by you. Every time you think about what you want, you give your dream more strength. Every time you think about what you fear, you give your fear more energy. So be careful with what you nourish in your head every day. Fear can only control you when you stay still. But when you act, fear loses its power. Like darkness, it exists only when light is absent. With just one ray of action, the darkness disappears. Don't forget, fear doesn't kill you. It just paralyzes you. And that paralysis is scarier than failure. Failure makes you learn, while paralysis keeps you stuck. If you're afraid, that's a good sign. It means you're about to step out of your comfort zone. And everything wonderful in life lies outside that comfort zone. I once said, courage isn't the absence of fear, but acting while afraid. You don't need to wait until you're no longer afraid to start. Start, and you'll find yourself becoming less afraid. Because every step is an affirmation that you control your life, not your fear. And when you learn to keep your mind focused on the goal, you'll feel a different kind of energy. You're no longer running away from what you fear. You're running toward what you want. And that's the difference between someone who lives by worry and someone who lives by a dream. And once you've learned to look ahead, what you need next is to learn how to create sustainable energy from your own consistency. Because it's not emotion, but stability and action that takes you to the finish line. In the next principle, I'll share with you a powerful mindset that action isn't just a tool for progress, but also a source of inspiration that fuels you every day. That is principle number 7. Action inspires action. Principle number 7, action inspires action. Once you've learned to keep your mind focused on the goal, the final important thing you need to understand is that action is the most powerful regenerative energy of the human being. It's not just a means to achieve something, it's also a self-sustaining source of inspiration. I used to believe that inspiration was something to be found. I used to think I needed to hear a really great speech or read a truly profound book before I could feel motivated to start. But over the years, I realized true inspiration isn't out there. It lies in movement. When you act even in a small way, you create energy, and that energy leads you to the next action. Inspiration isn't a lightning bolt from the sky. Inspiration is a flame you kindle through your own doing. Every time you complete something, no matter how small, you feel stronger, more confident. And that very confidence is the fuel for the next step. Action creates results, results create positive emotions, and positive emotions create new actions. That's the spiral of real motivation. I remember once meeting a middle-aged man at a seminar. He told me, "Jim, I always feel drained. I have no inspiration to do anything." I asked, "Are you taking action?" He replied, "No. I'm waiting for inspiration to come back." I smiled and said, "Then you'll be waiting forever. Inspiration won't come looking for you. You have to act to call it back." A few weeks later, he sent me a letter. He said he had started walking for 10 minutes every morning. And strangely, after just a few days, his mind felt clearer, his emotions better. And from those 10-minute walks, he started rewriting the goals he had abandoned. I read that letter and smiled. He had understood what many people never realize in a lifetime. You don't act because you're inspired. You're inspired because you act. If you're feeling stuck, don't wait for energy to come to you. Create energy through action. The more you act, the more alert you become. The more you stop, the heavier, slower, and more tired you feel. Not because you're weak, but because you've let your mind remain static for too long. The human body was born to move. The human mind as well. When you move, you send a signal to yourself that I still have control over this life. And that signal creates a very special feeling, the feeling of someone truly alive. I once said, you can't wait until you feel ready, because there is no such thing as ready enough. You just have to start, and action itself will prepare you. If you want to write, open your computer and type one sentence. If you want to work out, stand up and walk for 5 minutes. If you want to start a project, call the first person. Don't overthink it, just move. Everything else will follow. And the miracle is when you act, you don't just change yourself, you also inspire others. Because the energy of action is contagious. One person standing up can lead hundreds of others to dare to do the same. The world doesn't change thanks to people who sit still and daydream. The world changes thanks to those who stand up and do what they believe is right. Remember, an idea can inspire you for a few minutes. A speech can excite you for a few hours. But a consistent daily action can change your life forever. When you act, you step out of the zone of doubt, fear, and fatigue. You no longer ask, can I? You start affirming, I am doing it. And in that very moment, real life energy awakens. You're no longer searching for motivation. You become the source of motivation. I want you to remember, this inspiration isn't the reward for those who act. Action is the source of inspiration. If you want to feel purposeful, energized, and passionate, take action. No matter how small, how slow, how imperfect, do it. Because only when you do, will you feel truly alive. And when you are truly alive, everything else, success, peace, faith, will naturally find you. And now that you understand the power of action, look back at your whole journey today. From when you dreamed to when you started, maintained, built systems, accepted mistakes, learned to see progress, overcame fear, and now acted to create inspiration for yourself. You see, everything you need to change your life has always been in your hands. You just have to start. You see, the journey from dream less, do more isn't an easy road. It requires you to start even when you're not ready to keep going, even when you're not inspired to build systems, accept mistakes, recognize progress, overcome fear, and finally to act continuously to create your own inspiration. Those are the 7 principles I've learned, not from books, but from life itself, from falls, tired days, failures, and small victories. And looking back, I realize it's not emotion, not circumstance, but action that determines the direction of your life. Remember this, none of us are born strong. We become strong by facing things, training, and getting up after every fall. You don't need to be the best, you just need to be the one who doesn't stop. Because as long as you're still stepping, you're getting closer to the life you want. If today you do just one small thing, read a few more pages, focus for 10 more minutes, or simply dare to start, then you've already beaten your yesterday self. Don't let perfection hold you back. Don't let fear keep you still. Don't let your dream remain only a story in your head. Let it become your real journey. I once said dreams are the seeds. Action is the soil, water, and light. If you already have a dream, then now is the time to plant it. Don't wait for the weather to be favorable, start today. Because every small action today is proof that you're alive, and it's also the seed of the future you're building. And if what I shared today resonates with you, let me know that you're still on this journey with me. Comment below today, I take action. That's not just a sentence. It's a commitment that you won't let your dream die in ideas, but will turn it into reality step by step, day by day. If you want to keep learning how to train yourself, build discipline, and become the best version of who you are, hit subscribe to join me in the next videos. Each week, I'll explore with you more profound principles to help you live with intention, with value, and with true freedom. Because in the end, you and I share the same gift today. Use it wisely. Plant one small action, because from that tiny seed, a great future will grow. And I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue the journey of building the mindset, discipline, and steadfast heart of a successful person. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Jim Rohn